I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
Good morning, everybody. How art thou this morning? We are pretty raw this morning, or any part of this day. My name is Mark David Smith, and I do solemnly swear that you are watching Contemplating the Constitution. And as you'll see, my name here is not an attainer. You'll find out about that here in just a few minutes as we get on with the show and see what we have to offer this week. This is one area, the Constitution, of course, that I think most of us don't know enough about. Whether you know anything about it, you don't know enough about it. I'm just going to tell you straight out. And we're always looking for anybody that is versed on the Constitution. You please, you're welcome to get a hold of me, and I would love to bring you onto the show and let you be a part of the show. So you can go to the website, which I hope you're going to anyway, messianiclambradio.com. And contact me from there, and we will we'll see what we can do to get you to join us here. And speaking of joining with us here is Mrs. Abigail O'Hare, and look at this, we're like splitting heads. We'll do this way. We'll just split heads. We're like one brain split heads. No, it's not true. How are you?
That would be dangerous. That would be dangerous.
Yeah, you know. Today's technology, you do you have fun with it.
You ever see? I know you like movies. Have you seen the old Frankenstein movie?
The old Frankenstein. They've made about 40 of them, I think.
I mean, the very first one.
Most likely, I have. You'd have to specify, but yes. And is that what you're talking about, having different parts? And yeah,
well, that was pretty that was sure, yeah. That was pretty strange, but anyhow, yeah, that's what I think of every time when I see people messing around with other people's brains and putting things in them. And anyhow, but it's good to be here with you, Mark.
My favorite Frankenstein movie was Young Frankenstein with Gene Wilder. That was the funnest Frankenstein movie. He had a partner called Igor that when they went to make Frankenstein monsters, he went into his little side room, and it had jars of brains, and one of them would be normal and one of them would be abnormal, and I think they called the one they used Abby normal or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, it was fun. It was anyway about as anti-God.
I don't think we're too far. I don't think we're too far from that kind of thought. No, I don't. I think this generation here has some very interesting thought processes, and so I think this conversation, I think, was ordained by the Father.
Scary, just scary as it can possibly be. This whole generational thing, I'm telling you, I'm with you on that. So, well, I'm glad you're here with us, and let's bring Sherry Flanagan in with us. Hey, Sherry, how are you?
Fine. I had a test years ago where they had to do a CAT scan of my head. My cat just ran into the window. Had to do a CAT scan of my head, and the doctor said, here's her brain. It's on record she has one. So I have a certified brain, all in my medical records that I do. We've laughed about that over the years.
Hey, I got a laugh for you I thought of this past week. If cats could talk, Do you know the one thing you would never hear from any cat if they could talk? I'm
No.
sorry. I'm sorry. Is the one thing you'd never hear from any cat ever if they could talk.
I think my cat is sorry. She's over there going,
No, no,
because they were playing and jumped
No.
off the back of the couch and she went bam into the picture window.
yeah.
He's
All
okay.
right.
Just
All right.
slow
Well,
down.
Sherry, we're glad you're here this week. We missed you last week. We had a lot of great things to talk about, as usual, as we do every week. This is a show where we take the Constitution and we divide it up. In other words, every week we progressively go through every article, every section, every clause, every amendment, and it can take a while. But as we find out, it even just like this one is extremely short. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 words in this one clause. And I'm telling you, it's a month's worth of research on these 12 words. But believe me, of the things that have happened in the past, what they meant by what they were trying to say when they put it in there, and how that law has progressed and all that, which once again, I want to clarify, actually the Constitution are not laws. They are how the laws are applied and work amongst the citizens and the Congress and representatives of the citizens of the United States, how all that works. That's what the Constitution is. It's how this shall work. And I'm really crazy about all this because I think each day in the United States of America, we find that we need to actually understand these constitutional rights that are given us. That's a better way to put it rather than constitutional laws. They are our constitutional rights, and the rights of Congress, the rights of the president. They're the rights of all of the citizens of the United States. If you're not a citizen, you 100% do not have these rights. You're outside of that realm. And so it's very important that we understand these. Just this past week, it had several things regarding our rights, and even things we talked about on last week's show has come up just randomly in the news, and several other issues that I've run into this past week. So I love it, because if I didn't study this out and we didn't talk about this, then I really wouldn't have a clue what it is. So I have to admit that through my life, I'm 66 years old, and through my life, I have not paid attention to these things. And that's a deficit to me by far. And so we are on Article 1, Section 9. Today we're going to go to Clause 3. And most of you would think, my gosh, you've been doing this for a long time, and you're only on Article 1 and Section 9. Oh my gosh. And most of you would think, my gosh, you've been doing this for a long time, and I'm repeating myself. No, let me tell you what, you go look at the Constitution, Article 1 has its own part, and then when it starts getting into the sections, each section has multiple parts to it, which are called clauses. And let me tell you, we rarely go more than one clause per show and talk about it, but we have every once in a while. Like last week we did Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 and Clause 2. Clause 1 literally talked about immigration, and it talked literally, it was a protection of owner rights, that owners of slave rights. And of course, since that was done away with in the 1800s, then that constitutional section no longer applies, but it's still there and it has to remain there. One of the things Abigail and I talked about is in today's life, who knows, they may reenact slaves here in the United States, and then that constitutional right to slave owners will apply. We just don't know. Day to day, I don't know what's going to happen. So, you never know. But Clause 2 talked about the writ of habeas corpus, which gives people that are detained, whether or not they've already gone through a trial or within a trial or even before a trial, they have the right to have their all the facts that has brought them to be detained brought to court and presented not only for them but for the officers of the court, including the judge. This is a right. So let me give you just an extremely brief example. If you are detained, if any officer of the court comes and draws you away and brings you into the court system or puts you in jail, say writ of habeas corpus, writ of habeas corpus, writ of habeas corpus. You have the right to have a lawyer. That right there should bring a lawyer up at that point, and you have the right actually at that point to have all the evidence that is against you and the reason why you're detained brought where you can see it and have it presented to a judge right there at that moment. And so even while you're behind bars, you have that right as a citizen in the United States. And that's the biggest problem. That's one of the reasons that so many people are in jail and detained and all, because they don't know their rights. They can do it right then and there. I don't care if you're stopped for a speeding ticket and they take you to jail. Right at that moment, you can say writ of habeas corpus and have all that examined. You can have the police officer's meter that said that you were speeding examined right there at that point. Let me tell you what, a lot used to be they had to be calibrated. That meant that if they didn't, that they were wrong with your speed. So, hey, you have these rights. Anyway, Sherry was not here last week, and she had asked me if she could bring a little something, and we want to go ahead and get on with the rest of it. So I'm going to ask her to be brief. But she has an example of habeas corpus, which I think examples are always good because it helps us to clarify what we're actually talking about. So, Sherry, it's all yours.
Well, it comes to whether we know our rights or not, and a lot of police officers really don't know some of the things there. And I'm not down in the police at all. I love the police. I'm so glad here that we have them to keep law and order, and they put their lives on the line all the time. But I had a friend of mine, her son had a dental appointment, and he had told the dentist he wanted it on Friday so he would have his paycheck and he could pay him that day. And then they called and said, well, they wanted him to come in 2 days early. He said, I hadn't been paid yet. I can't pay you. They said, no problem. He went in, had the procedure done. He left. And of course, he'd had, anesthesia and all this stuff. His wife was driving. They stopped to get gas. Next thing they knew, they had a police car in back and a police car in front. Told him he had run off and not paid his bill at the dentist. The dentist had called the cops to him. And they took him and his wife down to the sheriff's station and were detaining them. And they said, well, he said, I don't have any money. He said, well, you better call somebody who does. So he called his mother. Well, his mother is not anybody's dummy, and she used to work in the courthouse. She showed up there and she said, what what happened? He said, told him the story. She turned around to the detectives and the policeman and says, since when is the sheriff's department a collection agency? This is not a criminal case. This is not something you lock somebody up for. This is a civil case, possibly a breach of contract, depending on what the other side is saying. So since when are you collection agencies? The detective said, well, walk out here with me. And she said, I want to know what their charges are. I want to know why they are detained. She said, I want to know why they are detained. The police officer the detective walked back in there and said, let them go.
No, right.
She knew the writ of habeas corpus, and she was using the correct legal terminology. Why are they detained? Similar thing happened to my son. He was stopped for it, and they said, well, we want to look in your trunk, open your trunk. He said, do you have a search warrant? And they said, he said, no, I'm not opening. Get a search warrant. And they said, why do you want a search warrant? He said, just because you don't have probable cause. Are you an attorney? He said, you don't have probable cause. He said, okay. And they left. So, you don't have to let them in your car. You don't, nothing. You get out of your car, lock your car. You do not have to unlock it.
Right. It really does boil down to the fact that because we don't know our rights, we allow them to do things that will bring them to whatever they want to do. And it's interesting because another writ that goes along with this, and by the way, a writ is a proposed, like we're going to get into the bill of attainder, and a bill is kind of a proposed law, a draft of a proposed law, but a writ is just a document or an understanding within the document that you have these rights. And that's what a writ is. And there's also what's called a writ of mandamus, mandamus, a writ of mandamus. And a writ, let me just read it real quick because I brought it up. It's not really covered in the Constitution, but it is a right of yours. So it is a constitutional right. A writ of mandamus is an order from a court to an inferior government official, ordering the government official to properly fulfill their official duties or correct an abuse of discretion. So let me just tell you, there's if the police show up at your front door without a warrant, with a warrant, it still works, but without a warrant especially, and they want to come into your home, and this is a real big under homeschoolers a lot of time, you can say writ of mandamus and say, no, you're not allowed into my house until I get a writ of mandamus. Basically, it's like the writ of habeas corpus. You are allowed a lawyer. You are allowed a legal defense before anything happens as far as a legal or illegal discretion of an official, any official. The police officer is an official. So if you say writ of mandamus, and then at that point it should stop all proceedings and allow you to get a lawyer to be in defense of you before the cops enter to your house. So that could stop, literally should stop all proceedings, unless if they have a search warrant, which is already something that they've gone to a judge to get. You still have the right. They can come in, but you still have the right. You don't have to say anything to them. You can actually have a lawyer there, and they can't do anything. They cannot take you away, nothing, until you have that lawyer right there. And that is basically a writ of mandamus. So a little extra something that we've got for you here before we get started, Sherry.
Just one quick comment on when if you're driving somebody else's car and they want to go through the car you're driving and that's not your car, you better not let them go through there because you don't know what's in there.
Yeah.
And that has happened to many innocent people.
Still, that would be more of along the lines of getting a lawyer. I want my personal lawyer here when you do this. And most of the time, what's going to happen there is they're going to actually have you bring the car you're in to the police station, give you time to get a lawyer, and then search the car, because they do have the right to do that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's you got to understand that government officials, government meaning whether it's federal or local government, they have a lot of rights too. And that's another thing that we don't know about, is their rights to do things. So challenging their rights without knowing what you're challenging, that's a touchy subject. I don't think I want to deal with too much, but I advise you to know their rights and your rights. Very good. Abigail, anything to add before we go on here?
People prove they're innocent, so they let them do anything. That's usually what's behind it. Yeah. Sorry,
no, it's okay.
No, it's okay. No, I've seen a lot of people get pulled over the side of the road by policemen, and they search the cars. Now, I know these people that they're searching the cars have no idea to say, do you have what's your proof that you need to search this? But because they have searched the cars, they have found drugs, they've found weapons in the cars, and and even these people are illegal. So let me ask you a question. So if these people are not citizens of the United States of America, they do have an opportunity to ask for identification, correct? That's legal.
The police officer has the right, yes.
They can ask for identification. Yeah. So if there's no identification, would that give license for them to be able to search the vehicle?
Well, one thing leads to another. That's one of those rights that you'd have to find out. I mean, if you are a legal citizen of the United States and you just don't have your information with you, you can stop it all by the writ of mandamus. You can stop. Writ of mandamus is stopping before something happens, is really what it is. And so you can say, I don't have my information, but I want my lawyer. Right there. Whether or not you've been, they'll say, yeah, but we haven't arrested you. Yeah, I still have the right to have somebody defend me because I don't know the law. Okay, so I have the right to have somebody. So it should stop all proceedings, and they can't search it from there. If you're a citizen, if you're not a citizen and you don't have any identification, you're out of luck.
Okay, you're in trouble. Yeah,
they're going to do that.
Yeah, they have to have some leverage with that because there's so much of that going on now, and I'm just saying that they've nailed a lot of criminals because they've done that. Search people's, pull them over.
Let me just put it this way: one of the rights of police officers is to ask you for identification, but they also have the right to ask you questions. Okay, and it is the law that you. I don't know what the word is, but go along with them. In other words, you don't have to give them any explanation, yes and no answers all the way across. It's kind of like pleading the fifth. I have the right to remain silent, but you should still work with them, because every time you don't, you're going to upset them even more, and they're going to take their legal rights to the next level. So if you just work with them and answer their questions the best that you can without any especially no long explanations, because every word you say can be used, whether they tell you those rights or not, every word you say can be held against you in a court of law, even if they don't read you those rights.
And
So
they can twist what you say because you said it.
they
Take it
can.
out of context.
I get it. They can and they will, but I'm just saying, it's what a lot of people want to fight this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, stop fighting. It's not worth the trouble. You don't know the law well enough to fight these things.
That's right.
That's the key to it. You don't. So back off and let them do their job, especially if you're not doing anything wrong. If you're out there doing something illegal, I got nothing for you. It's like Jeff Probst. I got nothing for you. You know, yeah, but if you're of your legal rights, you got legal rights. Just don't challenge the officers who have also have legal rights. Don't
a lot
challenge.
less headaches for us. If we just say a lot less headache, just say yes or no. One time we were stopped twice between county lines, and it ended up, and we, answer their questions stuff. It ended up they were looking for a child who had been kidnapped. The guy had gone in and killed the mother and her sister and had kidnapped this child. It was a horrible story. Everybody was cooperating. Everybody was getting out of their cars. You search my cars. We want to find this kid. I mean, it was, I'll start crying. But anyway, they got the child back safely. Praise the Lord.
I got another example, a personal example. And this happened when I was like 21, 22 years old. I was on a first date. I asked this girl out and I picked her up in my car and we were on the first date. We had just left and I think going to a restaurant or going somewhere and I got pulled over. And literally, it wasn't just one. It was like several cars. It was 4 or 5 cop cars all pulled me over, and they literally didn't even question us or anything. Both of us were taken out of the car, put handcuffs on, and taken to the police station. And what it was somebody, a couple, man and a woman, in exactly the same kind of car, had robbed like a jewelry store, robbed some place, and there was violence and everything, and they weren't going to mess around. They don't even question things. They'll just pull you over, put handcuffs on you, and take you away. But it within half hour, 45 minutes, they figured out it wasn't me, but it was still a couple. Needless to say, that date didn't go very well.
Maybe it was a sign she wasn't the one.
No, I understand. I know, but I'll never forget that. Anyway, those are examples. Those are crazy things. And so we'll segment this one out and let's move on. Let's go to Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3, which reads, no bill of attainder or ex post facto law shall be passed. Now, I think most of us have heard that expression, ex post facto. Both of you have heard that, right? You know, whether or not we understand exactly what that is. I've heard that before. Not a clue what it is, but I've never heard of what a bill of attainder. I've never even heard that expression before. So this has been interesting to research this out. So I'm going to give you a few definitions, of course, which I like to do because I need these definitions to be able to understand what the research is showing me. So we're going to look up, first of all, what is a bill? I just said a little bit earlier, it's a draft of a proposed law. So if someone is to bring what they would think that they like, the House of Representatives, a senator, anybody like that, somebody of Congress wants to propose a law, they have to put a draft together. That's a bill. Now we hear that all the time, that this bill has gone to Congress. Okay. And of course, we know the House of Representatives have to vote on that bill, and then the Senate, and then it goes to the president if you know they all agree. So this is it's a draft of a proposed law brought by somebody within Congress. And so what's an attainer? Our brain can go all different places there, but the definition of an attainer is a person who forfeits their civil rights as a consequence of capital punishment. Basically, a sentence, capital punishment, of course, we know is a sentence of death for treason or a felony. A lot of different reasons for capital punishment, but it's a sentence of death. And so an attainer is this person, that person who forfeits their civil rights. So a bill of an attainer, basically, if an act, let's say bill of attainer only has to do with capital punishment. If an act inflicts a milder degree of punishment than death, it's called a bill of pains and penalties. So you have one of the two, a bill of pains and penalties or a bill of attainer. So we know the definition now of an attainer being that person who has committed a capital punishment. A capital crime, sorry. Bill of attainder definition are laws that are directed against a specific person or group of persons, making them automatically guilty of serious crimes without normal proceedings. Remember, the clause says no bill of attainder or ex pacto law shall be passed. So what they're saying is you cannot pass a law that is directed against a specific person committing a serious crime without a normal court proceeding. Now, if you watch as many movies as I have, you'll see that a lot of times people do go straight to jail. A big example of that is Guantanamo. Guantanamo is full of people. That's why it's not in the United States. It's full of people detained by the United States that have never been to a normal court proceeding. It's also an item of legislation prohibited by Clause 3 that inflicts attainers without judicial process. Basically what I just said. It is a special act of legislature that inflicts capital punishments upon persons supposed to be guilty of high offenses such as treason and felony without any conviction, like we had said. The ban is intended to prevent Congress from bypassing the courts and denying criminal defendants the protections guaranteed by other parts of the Constitution. And that's what we're doing, is looking at these civil rights. The legislature assumes judicial magistracy, and a magistrate is a civil officer or judge, pronouncing upon the guilty of the party without any of the common forms and guards of trial, and satisfying itself with proofs when such proofs are within its reach, whether they are conformable to the rules of evidence or not. The legislator exercises the highest power of sovereignty and what may be properly deemed as irresponsible tyrannical discretion, being governed solely by what it deems politically necessary or of expedience, and too often under the influence of reasonable fears or unfounded suspicions. So basically, what it's saying is that just because you kill the president, they can't just throw you into federal prison. They can't do it, no matter what. They can detain you. What had happened beforehand is that they were going directly to prison and forgetting about them, because the most heinous of crimes, they just wanted to throw them away. And this is making sure that no matter how bad the crime is, you get due process. So that's basically what the bill of attainder is about. Anybody want to comment on that, or we go to the next section? Okay, next section. Go ahead, Sherry.
Well, it's just it was used by the British Parliament is why they came up with it. And it would just blanketly declare a certain group of people as criminals. And it had a set punishment, like you were saying. So it was a sneaky-fied way for the legislature to act like a judge and a jury and not even have a trial, on all that stuff. So, and then it'd be like, what was it some things used to not be illegal, but now are we doing the ex post facto now?
Are you sure about that?
Huh?
Are you sure about that?
I'm not sure about anything. I'm still working on my first cup of tea.
Says the British lawyer. Are you sure about that?
Yeah, they did. The Parliament did that kind of stuff. Like they did like the Puritans.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Back in those days, especially when they were putting the Constitution together. I mean, if you committed a crime out on the battlefield, forget it. They threw you in prison.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get to you later. We got other crimes we'll prosecute. We'll get to you later. No, not according to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 3. No, Bill of Attainder gives me the right to have my day in court.
That's right. And they did that in the Bastille in France. That's why they had a noble could throw someone in the lower recesses of the Bastille, and they'd stay there for years and years and years and never even know why they were there.
But once again, and I didn't bring it up. I mentioned it last week. You need to go back to last week's article and watch that. But I mentioned coming out in January is a new Jodie Foster movie about a lawyer, a true story of a lawyer that defended somebody that's in Guantanamo, that's being held by the United States, had been held for 10 years and never had a trial. And so that ought to be a real interesting movie to watch for movie buffs like me. All right. Going on here. Next one, ex post facto law. The word EX and POST, ex post, to me, immediately, I think anybody of any maturity in mind would know that has something to do with before the fact. Okay. The definition basically means having retroactive effect or force. And retroactive, of course, means taking effect from a date in the past. And Latin means after the fact. So I'm sorry, I said before the fact. After the fact. As soon as I started reading this, I thought, wait, what did I say? No, I meant after the fact. So the law basically means due process or fairness. One of the fundamental principles of the United States democracy and the United States Constitution. Laws that violate your due process rights are thus considered to be unconstitutional, and ex post facto law is considered to be unconstitutional because it takes effect after a date. And it's a law brought in after a specific crime is committed. A little more information. This protection guarantees that individuals are warned ahead of time that their actions are illegal. And here's another thing too, is that we were talking about this. The laws are public. You can't say, well, I didn't know that was the law. They're public. If you don't know, if they arrest you for something and you say, well, I didn't know that was against the law, you can't say that. It's one of those rights of the officials, is that all the laws are to be made public so that we have an idea of what's against the law and what isn't. But an ex post facto law is a law that's passed after the fact that criminalizes an action that was legal when it was committed. There's your key. Both federal and state governments are prohibited from enacting ex post facto laws, and the court applies the same analysis whether the law is in question is the law in question is a federal or state enactment. When these prohibitions are adopted as part of the original Constitution, many persons understood the term ex post facto laws to embrace all retrospective laws or laws governing or controlling past transactions, whether a civil or criminal nature. Every law that makes criminal an act that was innocent when done, or that inflicts a greater punishment than the law annexed to the crime when committed, is an ex post facto law when the prohibition of the within the prohibition of the Constitution. Because this provision does not apply to crimes committed outside the jurisdiction of the United States against the laws of a foreign country, it is immaterial in extradition proceedings whether the foreign law is ex post facto or not. Let me give you an example, and this is a real big deal in the United States as it is today. This is very real, and it's going on right now. Is that last week the House of Representatives passed the bill to federally legalize marijuana. Okay. And if Congress agrees to this and it goes through the president, it'll never go through our president now, it'll go through, but if Biden gets it, it'll never go through. But if it's passed as a law, then you are opening up ex post facto cases that are just going to be massive. There are going to be people let out of prisons everywhere, in every state, federally, locally, everything. Because what's happened is that through the past years, a lot of different people have been arrested for, all different kinds of marijuana laws. And when they pass it and make it legal, those no longer apply, and everybody that was arrested can be released because they've changed that law. So what this does is this actually gives them the right of, when I was arrested, this was the law, but you changed the law, so I can't be in prison anymore. I can't, at that point, I couldn't, if I were one of these people, I couldn't now sue the government for the time before because the law was in effect up until that time. But from that time forward, and basically immediately, as soon as the law it goes into effect federally, they have to be released immediately because they are no longer under that law. So this is one of the more prevalent examples of what's going on in the United States right now. And believe me, they are considering all of this within Congress of what they're going to have to do and how they're going to have to deal with this situation. So that's an example, another one of those things where you can't be changing things without understanding what it is exactly that you're going to get into. It's like no man goes to war without first counting the cost. So anytime they change a law or bring a new law in that changes something in the past where somebody had been arrested for it, they have to deal with these things. It's actually in some instances, if for instance somebody is convicted of a crime, and the detective that did the investigation that brought the crime to court and that this person was convicted. If somebody challenges after the conviction, they say you can't be charged twice, you can't go to court twice for the same crime. After they've been convicted, if the detective has, or if somebody has found out that what the detective brought to court was wrong, and they were convicted because of this evidence, and that evidence is wrong, then they can actually go against every single thing that detective has done up to that point. They can then go back and start opening all of the cases the detective has sent somebody because of the work that the detective. Sorry, I didn't have that prepared, so I'm fumbling over my words here, but you get the idea of what I'm saying. I'm telling you the details of a lot of things that are happening in the United States these days. Sure, lawyers are bringing a lot of things to court that were never done before. So anyway, opening it up here to discussion. Anything you guys want to bring to this? So
yeah, I'd just like to make something regarding the marijuana legality and people that, because they're trying, it's legal, in so many states now. I mean, I see Dr. Oz and Oprah are pushing gummy bears that are marijuana. I mean, I keep getting things from them. So I think that what's happened, and I know that there's been some people who have put people in prison, like you're saying, for their selling and distributing marijuana in the past. I mean, in prison, as you're saying. And other people were let loose, like people that were dealing with other drugs that are a lot worse. So anyhow, and I think there's a lot of really liberal states that are really pushing for it. And you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why is this being expedited now as far as legality? For what causes it? And the only thing I can think of is monetary, number one, because there's businesses that want to sell it. So they're thinking about selling this stuff. But on the other hand, it's numbing the brain. I mean, there's and I know there's some people that, people, I could have arguments with people and they'd say, it's great for you. It's really, it's medicinal. And I'm so thankful that they're legalizing it now. But it just seems like there's a darkness to it. We're talking about with the Constitution. And we're talking about, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every time I think of the Constitution, I think of helping people. I think of the Constitution was set up for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the spin it's taken now. I mean, I saw something on the news today that this man killed many people, just blatantly killed many people. And right now they're in court to release this man. And he wasn't even in court. He wasn't even in jail. I think a matter of maybe a year or so. And they're really pushing to release him. And there's these families that have had people that they loved killed by this person. But anyhow, so I'm just throwing this out there. It just seems like there's an agenda. And it doesn't seem like it's lining up with what the Constitution was originally designed for. There was a place of, where we could say, wait a minute, this is for our protection as a human being. And it's also to give some clout, if you will, to our government, that they can say, wait a minute, if you're not living in a lawful manner according to the Constitution, we need to, deal with it, because it's not going to help our social codification. So I'm just, to me, there's such a spin going on, and I really, I have to say, all lawyers are not righteous people. A lot of lawyers are chasing ambulances, and they just want to make money. There was one guy running for president, I don't know how many years ago, and he's a lawyer, and he was chasing ambulances, to try to make some money. He didn't care about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He just had an agenda. I'm going to make some money on this case, whether they're innocent or whatever. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm like looking at this saying, I love reading about the Constitution. I love seeing what's happening here, and I can see it back then in the day. And now I see there's such a spin on it. Is it helping this next generation? Are these liberties, if you will, that are being expedited, changing the law, are they helpful? Or is there an agenda for monetary gain on one side, and then also trying to destroy the minds of people so they're not functioning?
Okay. Based on what you just said, we're all out to try to make a buck, whether it's individually or corporately or whatever, government or whatever. We're all out to make a buck, first of all. I won't argue the issue of legalization of marijuana or the pluses and minuses of marijuana. I have already done that on the Lamb Network with John and Sandy Craig. As a matter of fact, you can go to the news section of the Lamb website and see a pretty lengthy and in-depth discussion John and Sandy Craig and I had on this issue. So I won't discuss it any further than that. I've made my point, my statements on all of that. So I won't argue them anymore or even discuss them. But I'm more than willing to hear anybody else's input on that. And I appreciate your input.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm not standing one way or another.
I know, and neither do they.
But I'm just saying, I can see the value in releasing some of these people who were behind bars because of smoking marijuana. To me, there are a lot worse situations where somebody should be behind bars.
Well, what's the new vice president under Biden? What's her name?
Harris.
What is it, Harris?
Kamala.
I don't say her first name because that's the name of a Hindu goddess.
Kamala.
Her name is Harris.
Okay.
I'm not saying
that's not the point.
Yeah.
That's not the point. I'm just trying to say, from what I understand, is she has a reputation in San Francisco of jailing a massive amount of people just for smoking marijuana.
Exactly.
And so when it comes down to this new law trying to be passed, and it's already overwhelmingly been passed by the House of Representatives, which that means that it will overwhelmingly be passed by the Senate, depends on which person it reaches when it gets to the presidency, in my opinion. And so that would be the only thing. Now, once again, all the other stuff of releasing prisoners or, compensation or anything like that, I will comment on that. And I think that, yes, I think there's been an overwhelming wrong done to a lot of people, but the law is the law. I'm a realist. Everybody knows I'm a realist. The law is the law. Whether or not I disagree with any law, once it's law, it's law. And I, as a citizen of the United States, am to uphold that law, and especially as a representative of a ministry. I'm held to uphold that law. I can protest against it, but I don't break laws. And so it's extremely important to me that I abide by those things. So that's the way I look at it.
But it's the enforcement of the law is what I'm talking about. Because No,
Of course.
there's some, and I've been in court situations. I've actually, you sit on the jury and you have to make these decisions. And so there's people that are trying to enforce a law. Like example, someone that smokes marijuana. I'm using that as an example.
Sure.
And then they, instead of saying, let's do rehabilitation for this individual, why throw them in with a bunch of criminals? Obviously, unless there's really signs of criminal activity, let's do some rehabilitation. That's the only thing where, and this woman, Harris, she did not think like that. She was putting these people in jail for people that could have gone through rehabilitation and letting out people who really needed some serious time because of their criminal activities. And this is a fact. This is her history. And so I'm just wondering, though, about the period of time that this is written, these laws.
Right.
And the period of time and what was happening back then with mankind and where we are today.
Uh-huh.
And so we talked about this before, that there would seem to be that there would have to be some adjustments regarding where we are today as civilization, as social codification of all of us. And so I think that there's something to be said about defining the law, if you will. I'm looking at it from a very objective viewpoint. Nothing subjective. Everything is like, I'm just looking at it from a life living, the pursuit of happiness.
Sure, we need that, and that is what the show's about. And let me emphasize that every single article, section, clause, amendment, all has its history. Each one of them individually. And that's one of the reasons we're taking each one of them individually. I mean, I could have taken this one, which, what did I say, has 12 words in it. I could have taken this and said, okay, this is the definition of this. This is what this means, and go on to the next one and hurry through them. But I don't. I want to give almost an over explanation of these to help people understand, because there are things within them that if you just give the definition, or that's the base bottom line of what it means, a lot of people don't get it. They don't understand. So the more information you give, and the history, each one of them has a history. The bill of attainder and ex post facto, they all have a history. Writ of habeas corpus, it all has a history of things that's happened since this. And of course, we know, because you and I talked about this, Abigail, that Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 only lasted so long, 20 years. It lasted 20 years, and then it was history, because they no longer had, the owners had no rights over their slaves. So yeah, there is history, but how does it apply today? That's what we're trying to cover. That's what we're trying to talk about.
And back to that habeas corpus, that writ of habeas corpus, then we talk about if there's a terrorist, if people could be labeled a terrorist, that they could be they could be confined, that right of habeas corpus would not pertain to them, because they were just like you were.
That's right. That's right. If you were a terrorist, you gave up your right. If you were deemed a terrorist, you're right. I had forgotten about that. You actually give up your right of habeas corpus. But you still, because right after we talk about that, we talk about the bill of attainder, which gives everybody, whether you're a terrorist or not, if you've committed a capital crime, which is a sentence of death or treason, which most terrorists get in this country, they still have that right for a court proceeding. They just don't have the right to have it all brought to them ahead of time, okay, and stop all the court proceedings. That's the writ of habeas corpus. So it's interesting. See, I like these. I like knowing these now, because it helps me to understand when I hear what's going on in this country. Another thing, too, is you talk about a terrorist. All of these are only applicable to citizens of the United States. And I mentioned Guantanamo Bay before. From what I understand, the majority of the detainees in Guantanamo Bay are non-citizens of the United States, and they don't have the same rights that we do. Yet still, morally and ethically, to keep somebody detained in a federal government facility for any length of time without charging them with a crime is morally and ethically wrong, in my opinion.
Well, all right, let's look at the people that were the people that were attacking people in the states. People who were attacking
The citizens.
The citizens, yeah, they were burning down businesses and beating up citizens,
right?
And then they were being, they may have been thrown in prison, but then somebody, and we won't name any names, bailed them out. But then someone else stepped in and said, "No more bail. You are destroying property. You are hurting the civilization. You are in prison." There's a lot of people now who are in prison because of this act of violence, this act of terrorism. And I'm thankful for that, because there should be consequences to our behavior. I mean, I'm talking about when no, there should be. I mean,
I agree.
There are consequences, but there should be. I mean, people that are burning down businesses, threatening people, beating them up, and that should not go without some form of punishment. That's just.
I agree.
Okay,
I agree. My deal is, though, they're still human beings. They may have a totally warped, stinking mind, but they're still a human being. And for the last time I checked, my God loves the righteous and the unrighteous. I'm not gonna say it's the same, but the same. He still loves the righteous and the unrighteous. And we should have mercy on those. He has mercy on us, who has mercy on others. And so, that as a human being, I still want to give them the human being right of having whatever you have against me. Even though I'm not a citizen of the United States, I want to at least be confronted by your people and not detained because you think I did something. See, because Abigail, for a fact that there are people that have a grudge against somebody else, and they'll do something. I mean, what if there was somebody that you thought was the terrorist? Well, you don't want them. Do you want them detained because you think they're a terrorist? That's my point.
Okay, let me look at
benefit of the doubt.
Let's bring scripture into it. Okay,
all right, yeah, okay.
We just left the Pasha reading of Joseph. He told his brothers, "I had a dream." His brothers were jealous.
Good point.
So the story is, threw him in a pit, sold him, and he was sold off to slavery. Okay, but here's the beautiful story about all this, because Joseph even said it when he saw his brothers again. "I forgive you. What you meant for evil, the Father meant for good." Right. And so the bottom line is this, and here I see this as the sovereignty of the Father. So what they went through, in their jealousy and in their envy and all that, they actually played right into the hands of the Father, putting him in a place where he was the provider for the world during a famine. But I'm saying this, that there's always going to be a judgment or a reward by our Heavenly Father. He knows when we are in the right standing with him, and he also knows when we are the enemy of righteousness. And so he also disciplines. He's a loving Father, but there's also, if you read in Deuteronomy, there's consequences to our bad behavior.
Amen. Amen. I'm with you.
So I'm just,
I am with you.
yeah. So I just think that this is what
All
this.
right.
Oh, but go ahead, Sherry. I know you.
Yep.
You're going to bring this all around, wrap it up in a bow, and we're all.
No, we're good. We got a
I was
few
making
minutes.
notes.
I want to finish at the top of the hour. So let's put some last touches on this. Sherry.
That's why I made notes so I could talk.
As long as it takes us to the top of the hour, that's
Okay.
good.
No problem. Okay. Number 1, 2 movies has some rough language in it. We were talking about attorneys and how, want to make money and all this. One of them is The Lincoln Lawyer.
Yeah, good one. Matthew McConaughey
is an older one called From the Hip. It has Judd somebody in it, or somebody Judd, but it's called From the Hip. If you can find it, it's really interesting. Okay, now that said, going back to Harris and her history, one of the things she did, and a lot of people don't realize this, is that the Veritas tapes that came out where they were selling body parts of the of babies that they were murdering in the womb. She is the one who enacted a law they had on the books. They had never prosecuted anybody with it before, and she used it. She is the one behind it, who got the ball rolling, who got it all set up. And then when she got into Congress, she handed it off to the prosecutor who completed it. But she was the actual root of that. So that tells you that Wicked Witch Woman's, my opinion, not Messianic Lamb, don't send him emails. I call her a witch. That's exactly what she is. And she has no respect for life. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But we know this one is true. So it's not a false witness. And but anyway, that's a personal opinion. But she got that started, and she is responsible for the murder of many, many babies. The next thing is the ex facto law. There's a flip side of the coin of what you've been talking about, Mark. You're talking about if somebody was sentenced under something and they changed it. This is something, it's kind of the flip side. If someone was given 5 years for a particular crime, and then they passed a law that had a minimum sentence of 15 years for that specific crime, they cannot go back and tack on 10 more years to that person who's already been sentenced under the law. So that keeps them from changing the law and prosecuting people under a different standard than what they were originally prosecuted from. Or like if you accidentally step on the president of the United States toes, okay, that's not really a crime because you did not intentionally mean it. But then all of a sudden they pass a law saying it is, they can't go arrest you for it because at the time you did it, it was not illegal. So that would be kind of an extreme example, but it's just to make a point. And then the next thing that I wanted to say is that, Guantanamo Bay is a military base. So I don't know what military laws govern all that because they kind of operate under a different thing. I don't know how long they can hold somebody or whatever. And that's why, and there was talk one time of bringing them to the United States, and they said they would not let them set foot in the United States because then they would have particular rights under our Constitution. And they did not want them to have that because there was a possibility they could let them go or whatever, I don't know. And then the last thing is, and this is where people get confused, and some of our judges out there are confused. You cannot change the Constitution. Those are rights. But the laws can be changed according to what's going on in society, like what Abigail mentioned earlier. It was a different time 50 years ago than it is now. So there were different laws passed. A lot of these draconian laws against drugs and things were passed 50 years ago. and they were applicable at that time, and then they've been taken, they took the letter of the law and used it a lot of times. So now we're in kind of a different situation where we're realizing these people really need rehabilitation. It's just like alcohol. The 18th Amendment was a prohibition, but the 21st Amendment overturned that. I mean, it really shouldn't have been in the Constitution anyway, in my opinion. But they did that, and people that had speakeasies back then, I was going to say, couldn't be prosecuted. Like, if, in other words, they couldn't change the law on them. So they were like rights and everything. I don't know if I made sense on that one. I kind of got off track. Went on a rabbit trail because I'm talking fast. But anyway, what I'm saying is people have viewed the Constitution as a progressive thing, and the Constitution needs to be changed and all that. Constitution is written in granite. Unless they put an amendment in the Constitution that adds to or take away or something like that. So the 18th added to, the 21st took away. I not got all that settled. But now the laws that are out there, they can be changed. And that is the responsibility of the legislature. The judges just say what the law says and they enforce the law. So it comes back to our balance of powers and everything. So we've seen people try to change the Constitution, call them progressives. We cannot do that. Those were, unless they add an amendment or take out an amendment. So that's the only way the Constitution can be changed. But the laws, if we don't like the laws, now they can be changed. Does that make sense?
It does. I love that. I love that, Sherry. I love that. I don't want to change the Constitution, but I just think that we have to look at it from where we are as a society, where they were then. Can I make another suggestion of a good movie?
Sure.
A case To Kill a Mockingbird.
That's a great movie.
That is a great movie. I mean, talk about compassion, and I just think that's a great movie. That's probably one of my favorite as far as the legal. It's just, to me, it strikes a lot of tender nerves in people, but it's to me it's showing. There's a lawyer,
He was a good lawyer. He was a good man.
A very good lawyer. And and I like it because it brought in his daughter, and I just thought there was just a lot of compassion there, and anyhow, I like that movie. I really enjoy that movie. We were throwing out movies. I wanted to be in the movie.
About lawyers.
About lawyers, yeah. I love you bringing that up, Sherry, about the fact that, the Constitution is in granite, but the laws with the right, need to be, I think, looked over again, and with the right people. I mean, because some people can change the laws and it can put us in a very dangerous position too.
Well, that's what they're doing with this marijuana law.
Yes.
50 years ago, it was a huge problem. It was a different mindset. So it's something that can be, looked at and changed and get people the help they need. And I'm going to tell you, it goes into the spiritual too. A lot of people need deliverance. A lot of it has to do with being delivered, but that gets into another type show.
It's true though. Instead of putting a Band-Aid on it. No, you're right. Deliverance, instead of saying, instead of a Band-Aid. I agree. I agree.
We've seen many of those things, hadn't we, Abigail? Many people delivered.
Yes, we have, and we're still seeing it, but again, a different society where, I'm going to, another time for another day, because I know Mark wants to wrap it up, and we're already 2 minutes over. Sorry, Mark.
All right. No, it's okay. I want to clarify, though, really, 50 years ago, the marijuana laws were literally about control.
Mm-hmm.
They were more about control than anything else. And if you go look at the history up to about 80 years ago, you'll find why they wanted that control. But today, it literally is about money. It has nothing to do
It
with
is.
control. It has nothing to do with anything else. It's 100% about taxes and money, and they've already proven by the testing of the states, starting with Colorado and then going up to all the other states that have not only legalized it for medicinal use, but for regular everyday use outside of medicinal use, and taxed it. They've learned that it's a massive thing. It's the same thing as alcohol. It's not any different whatsoever at all, but it has to do with the money coming into the government. So that being said, yes, we need to wind this one down. Next week we will go into Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4. This is a good one. Done most of my research on it so far. No capitation or other direct tax shall be laid unless in proportion to the census or enumeration herein before directed to be taken. So starts right off with no capitation. So if you don't pay your taxes, it's the government is not allowed to cut your head off. Basically, what it's trying to wait. Hold up. No, that's decapitation. Sorry, I got that one wrong. Sorry, wrong research on that one. No, I'm just joking. But that's what we'll talk about next week. It's very interesting. We're going to talk about different kinds of taxes and how they taxed back then and how they tax today. And I've already got my research started. Very, very interesting. As with all of these things, I feel sorry for. I watched the numbers of the people that come in, and about 15 minutes before our shows are over, we double in people. And I don't understand why. So I'm talking to you people that come in the last 15 minutes of the show. I don't get why you do that, but you're missing a massive, massive amount of learning by coming in so late in the show. We start at 9:45 Eastern time. You can figure that out in your time zone. But listen, our shows are packed full of your rights. We talk about your rights as a citizen of the United States of America and all of the other people's rights. So come in early next time, or go to the website and watch the archive of it. Just look for Contemplating the Constitution. It's listed in several different places. And all the archives are there, divided up per article. Anyway, here we are, and there we go. Thank you guys for joining me. It's always good. I've never known this to be a bad show, and especially when you guys are on it. You guys just make it a good show. That's all there is to it, and I appreciate it. Abigail, oh hear ye, oh hear ye. Say hi to Jamie Boy for me.
He's been on the chat room. He's been having a good time.
I noticed that while you're talking, Israel, my delight, is chatting, and I'm going, gosh, I know she can do a lot of things at once. That's amazing how she can talk and type in the chat at the same time. Abigail, just all new respect for you.
I know. That was James. And I kept wanting to say James there he is adding his he also mentioned another movie that you're gonna, it's called A Time to Kill with Matthew McConaughey and Sandra Bullock.
Yeah, he does. Matthew McConaughey does good law movies. That's all there is to it. All right.
Those are based on the Grisham novels, and another one is the very first one they made, The Firm. That really is eye-opening on how what's his name, the star, gets out with the mafia.
All right, we're winding this out. Thank you, Abigail. Thank you, Sherry. As always, you guys have great input. I really appreciate it. God bless you. And Abigail's show, Hidden Voice of Hadassah, comes on this evening. You can see the schedule on the website, followed by Israel My Delight right after her show. You can look on the website and see their schedule, what time it is in your time zone. Sherry's got a massive amount of teachings, once again, on the website. You wouldn't know that unless you went to the website. If you go to the website, you'll find massive. We're talking 1,500 videos on there. Not of just Sherry's. I'm saying across the board, there's about 1,400 to 1,500 videos. Why are you laughing, Sherry?
Because I'm going like, I know I hadn't done 1,400 videos.
No, not just Sherry. Sherry's about half that many. So we're close. Anyway, go check them out.
Massive thing I'm working on is a study in the book of Hebrews. I know I keep mentioning that. That's whew.
All right. So Messianic Lamb Radio, MessianicLambNetwork.com. We'll see y'all next week for sure. God bless and thank you guys.
Shalom. Happy Hanukkah.
Yes, happy Hanukkah. Hag Sameach.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.
I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear.
I, Dwight D. Eisenhower, do solemnly swear.
I, Barack Hussein Obama, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States. So help me God.